Welcome everybody to another Gazarian Real Estate Center speaker series. My name is AJ. I'm the director of the Gazarian Real Estate Center. And today we have the pleasure of hosting Andy Haussler, who is now assistant city manager for the city of Clovis. So that is congratulations, go in order. And last time I've known Andy for the last 5 years, and as soon as I've met him, I invited him. This was 2017, so he was one of the first speakers that I ever hosted. I believe it was February 2018. So it's already been 4 years. So it was time for an update on what's going on in Clovis. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Andy, and hopefully he'll have plenty of things to say about what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years since we heard from him. Thank you, Andy. Always a pleasure.
Having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think the last time I was doing something formally with the Gazarian Center was the bus tour.
That is correct. Yes, Andy, you've participated in a lot of our events, and including the bus tour, which it was quite a successful. I think you enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was great. I doing these kind of events and doing them again has been really reflective for me. 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, especially the last few years has been a long time. So I am happy to be back, and it gave me an opportunity to be really grateful for the progress that we've seen in Clovis, and that we've made it through some pretty interesting, if not really hard times as a community. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation, and I'll kind of get into what's been going on in Clovis. And I'm wide open for any questions that the group may have. So don't be bashful. Just want to make sure everyone can actually see the first slide there. Oh, very good. So yeah, I'm with the city of Clovis. I'm the assistant city manager. I have been with the city coming up on 16 years here. And I've been in a variety of positions. My background is in neighborhood development, neighborhood revitalization, housing. And then I've been doing economic development for the city for probably about 6 or 7 years in a lead capacity, the director of. So Clovis has been an incredibly fruitful place for me, both career-wise and just being able to see the fruits of a lot of people's labor. You know, not too long ago, this is what Old Town Clovis looked like. I showed this picture at the last formal presentation I did. And I always like to pay respect to the folks that made Clovis what it is today. If you're on Clovis Avenue, that sign looks familiar, but it looks much different today. And that is because of people that have gone before me, going back 20, 30 years, that have made Clovis what it is, whether it's through land use planning, through residents engaging in their community, our leadership. And I am just a blip along the way of Clovis now leadership that is trying to make Clovis just a great place for future generations. So much of my job, even now as the assistant city manager, is to help sell the city's general plan. And this is our current general plan. Some updates on that. We are just beginning to start looking at updating our general plan. The last time we did a formal update was in 2014. A lot of things have changed since then. But our general plan gives us a guide as to what can goes where and where we have opportunities. So we're going to be going through this map today on different opportunity spots. But much of how I view my job and my lens is fulfilling the general plan, which is a document that the community has bought into, our council has approved, lots of public input on what kind of community we want to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ahead of us. All right, so like I said, I was going back and kind of thinking through a little reflection. Last time I spoke at the Gazarian, whether it was the bus tour previous to that, and shortly thereafter, we were all put in the dog cone of shame via COVID lockdowns. And so this is our dog. This is Daisy, the Haussler family dog after a procedure. I don't want to violate her medical records, but she got put in the cone of shame. And it made me think of how we have been locked down as a community, the Fresno, Clovis state, nation, starting in 2020. And how things have changed since I last spoke at the Gazarian. And we had the cone put around us, whether it was via a lockdown or just a drastic change in our daily lives. Many varied experiences during COVID. Some people worked more than ever, and some people worked from home. Some people lost their jobs, as we'll go through some of those things. But a lot of change has occurred, and it was a pretty hard time. And hopefully we can say that the cone is off now, but I'll see. So I'm going to show you some slides I showed you all last time, just some economic snapshots. So we have, last time I was saying we had 176 million in permits pulled for commercial and industrial. In the last few years, we've been about 50 million. So a downward shift. That 176 million represented some incredible growth for the city. We'll get into that in a little bit. But 50 million is kind of back down more to our typical average. Residential permits pulled. We were over 1,000, and we were over 1,000 the last few years as well, which is historically really good for us. But we're thinking we're going to be at about 800, or a 25-year average going forward. A big change is our average home price went from 320,000 back then to 489, according to Zillow yesterday. It's probably a little higher than that today. So that's been a big shift for our community. Huge ramp up, and our population has grown from 117 to 122. We'll see where we're at this year. Numbers for 2021 will be released in early May, late April. And last year we were the second fastest growing city in the state of populations over 100,000. So we've seen a lot of growth in our community, even with those home prices ramping up. We've seen a ton of growth. All right, so back to 2020. We're all waking up from a year, and these are memes that some of my buddies put together during COVID. So this is year quill, where you get to hydrate from 2021 or 2020. Maybe we wanted it for 21 as well. And then we saw some other major changes. Our sales tax revenue, when we went into COVID as a city, we weren't sure what was going to happen. Sales tax revenues increased 34% from pre-pandemic levels. That is huge for us. Usually we saw like 2 or 3%, maybe 5% gain in a year, but over a multi-year period, about 16%, 17%, somewhere in there, annualized, we've seen 34% increase in sales tax revenues. And that comes from a lot of what you've heard about, people buying goods rather than services, people staying home rather than going spending money on vacations, people making improvements to their homes. It's been remarkable. Our hotel revenues, we thought they were going to hit the floor, and we did have a drop, but now we're over $1 million better than we were last time I talked to you all. So we're at $3+ million in hotel tax revenue, so about a 30% increase, almost 50% increase. We've doubled our hotel rooms. We finished some hotels during COVID, or they opened right at the beginning, and we've been able to maintain occupancies that beat industry averages. So that's all really encouraging, despite some of the challenges we all went through, at least from the city's opportunity side. All right, so we went through the year of mayhem, this guy from Allstate, and we did have some things that were are tough, and I'll get into explain them. Median household income went up to $80,000 during the last few years. Some of that's true growth. At the same time, some of that is due to, I think, one-time federal transfers. Our education level stayed about the same. We had a drop of almost 3,000 employed persons in our community of jobs. And while our unemployment rate has kind of gone below where it was several years ago now, the 3.2%, I think that is really more of a reflection of a shrinking job pool. Labor market is getting smaller. So we have some major workforce issues to work through. And this isn't just us, this is a national issue. Our new business licenses, one also bright spot during COVID is we saw a lot of entrepreneurial growth. People were just trying to figure out something and got businesses going. And we've been spending a lot of effort through a couple of different avenues to encourage these new businesses to get launched and get started, to give them support. So our business licenses is 794. That's about what it was historically. But during the COVID years, we saw numbers up into the low thousands. So a significant increase there. All right, so Clovis is not an island, obviously, and we are impacted by national events. So in the light of the numbers I just gave you, we saw GDP have a huge drop and come back. We're not isolated from this. That is a shock that's going to leave some scars, hence the labor market changes. Much of the comeback has been in durable goods, and we've seen drops in other areas as far as change in GDP, but mostly overall we've seen increases. But services is the lion's share of what's come back as a country, but we're seeing shifts in the market that I think are becoming permanent or part of that scar tissue that we've had from COVID. And if I'm speaking to a room of economists, I apologize, but you guys probably know more than me. We've seen major changes in where spending is happening across the country, and Clovis is no different. When I look at our charts, they're very similar. I pulled this from the Wall Street Journal just because it was so representative. We're seeing a bounce back in airlines. We're seeing a drop in like wholesale and home supply. They're kind of staying flat, but we're starting to see the service economy come back, and Clovis is seeing that as well. So hopefully that'll push some of the job numbers back up as far as who's participating in the labor markets. Like I said, we're seeing a drop in durable goods and a coming back to normalization for services going forward. Now, one thing that's been really interesting is watching the civilian labor market. As far as compensation, we're seeing a huge spike in compensation. And that has been, and that seems to be continuing. Clovis is no different. If you go to our In-N-Out Burger or anywhere, Starbucks, they're paying $17, $18, $19 an hour. If you, a couple of years ago, it would have been more like 14, 15, 16 an hour. So we're seeing huge spikes. And hopefully we'll pull people back into the labor market and give us the services we need. And corresponding to this, we've seen some incredible quit rates. California is leading where people are just leaving their jobs. And this is putting a ton of stress on our local businesses. So from an economic development perspective here at the city, we've been spending a lot of time focusing on supporting our local businesses that are here, understanding their needs, helping them through COVID, helping them through all the phases of COVID that we went through, what the restrictions meant, helping them find resources, working with the Fresno County EDC on job programs as they are dealing with staff shortages that have been incredibly hard to manage. So with that increased income, whether it's from the feds or from increased pay, we've started to see what's coming next, inflation. So we've got huge increase in energy prices. As this slide indicates, California is leading the pack on that. We all know that. I filled up last night at Costco. And we've seen inflation hitting 8%. This hasn't happened in some time. This is what the Federal Reserve, this chart right here, actually looks at for calculating their inflation targets. And they like to see this chart at around 2%, which is right about in here. And we are rocketing past it right now. So with that coming ahead for Clovis, the country, really the world is seeing the Fed starting to adjust their target rate and limiting their tapering programs. And what we're going to see is the cost of capital increasing. Just this morning, I saw this chart come up from what the benchmark Fannie Mae 30-year mortgage rate is, and we're seeing a huge spike in the cost of capital. So how does that relate to Clovis? In that we're going to go through some opportunity areas, but we're entering into an extreme time of unknowns, of volatility, and everyone's trying to figure out what their next steps are. And Clovis is not immune to that. Our residents aren't immune to it, and the business community is not immune to it. Because going forward, things are going to need to adjust and be different. For instance, single-family home development really is what drives our population growth. Well, if we see interest rates go up too high, we may see a moderation in home sales. Or if home prices, it might push home prices down a little bit, and they may actually help home sales. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a full PhD economist, but it is something to be aware of. And I wanted to provide that to this group as kind of some context of where we're heading going forward relative to the kind of global, macro, nationwide economics. All right, so that was a lot of economics, and frankly, 2 years of, I don't know what it was, COVID, everything else that got mixed up, and it's a bit exhausting. This is a picture of my boys on a backpacking trip last summer, exhausted on a route at about 8,000 feet. And I think many of us can identify with that feeling of exhaustion going through what we each uniquely went through during COVID. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move past it and kind of get through and get into a mental place of looking to where we can invest our time and resources going forward as business individuals, as cities, government entities, and as a community as a whole, to start building our community for the next chapter, now that we've gone through some pretty significant disruptions and probably have some significant volatility to deal with going forward. I was really encouraged during COVID to see how resilient our business community was and how we all came together. I had a front row seat to it, to some very significant pain that businesses were dealing with, as well as residents. I also oversee the city's affordable housing programs. We were providing rental assistance and other forms of assistance during that time, and to see what families went through, it was a significant traumatic event. But what I fear is that we're going to get stuck in that, much as my boys are stuck in this picture, and not get to the potential we have, which is getting to the top of that hill. So I'm hoping the next of this presentation maybe inspires or sparks ideas that you want to talk about further with me or with other city staff on where's an opportunity to start laying groundwork for the next generation and some business opportunities for you all. All right, so here's an aerial with the city of Clovis. This map has changed. The red line is our city limits. We've added significant area into our city limits up into the North Heritage Grove area, which I'll talk about a little bit. Also some out in our Loma Vista area, and then a few pockets for housing into the Dry Creek Preserve area. So we're going to go through some opportunities or what has happened. So this was right before COVID hit. This was like the kind of 6 months of what we had achieved. Costco opened right before. We had several hotels coming up. At Home filled our old Kmart. Hobby Lobby filled our old Toys R Us. We were super proud of being able to keep our Shaw Avenue corridor boxes full. That's not unique, or that is unique, especially in other communities in the valley where a lot of big boxes stay vacant for a significant period of time. We saw new growth in Loma Vista with our first commercial development, and we saw Herndon Avenue continue to stay strong with some boxes being filled, fuel stations being added. Five Below opened up in a box. Aldi took over an old space. And then, of course, we got Dutch Brothers, which apparently all the teenagers were and college students were extremely excited about because that place is going crazy. During COVID, this was really encouraged the last 2 years. This is all the stuff that we saw happen in Clovis. So it was nothing that was going on, that's for sure. We had a new brewery open up in our Dry Creek Industrial Park. CHSU, California Health Sciences University, opened up their medical school, a huge investment in our research and technology park in the Sierra Gateway Commerce area. The Veterans Affairs announced a medical project. Clovis Community continued their expansion. We had an accounting firm open up a professional office. Anlin, a window manufacturer, purchased some property to do a major expansion. The County of Fresno and the City of Clovis broke ground on a new civic center complex for a senior center, a library, and a transit hub. We had some new restaurants in Old Town. We had a new museum opened up by a Veterans Memorial District. We had another new restaurant called Neighbors, Raising Cane's, opened up in Clovis that took over an old Pier 1 space. We had a brewery open up. Provost and Pritchard moved their local headquarters here into Clovis. A coffee roastery, Cabinet Connections. They opened up a huge manufacturing facility here in Clovis, consolidated. Another brewery, you can tell that there's kind of an interest in breweries. There was maybe some medicine for the soul during COVID. Milan took over a major vacant space on Shaw. We had a new health center open up, United Health did. We had 2 hotels under construction. Now Courtyard is open and Residence Inn is rising out of the ground. The County of Fresno with the Cook Land Company took over all the old Pelco area and the old Costco, converted it all into Class A office. And now we have more employees working in that area of town than we've ever had, even when Pelco was at full force. And I know it's not in Clovis, but I was super stoked about seeing Southwest Airlines come into our airport. And that's a big deal to provide connectivity to Clovis, to Fresno, and to our market. And I think the city of Fresno and the Fresno EDC and everyone that was involved in making that happen, because that's a really big deal. So I wanted to highlight that. Also, we lost a lot of events, and that's a big deal here in Clovis for folks during COVID. Whether it was Old Town Business Association, the BOOT, Business Organization of Old Town, all their events have come back or held steady. The Clovis Rodeo is coming back in full force. They operated last year. Now it's game on for this year. This weekend, we have Big Hat going on that the Clovis Chamber of Commerce is putting on. Clovis Unified is welcoming back all the sporting athletic events and arts and culture events that they host from statewide. They host statewide track and field and other events that draw a lot of people to us. So our visitclovis.com website is back and alive and well with events. So things are really happening, and we're excited to see that we can host people back in our community and the revenue they bring to our businesses. All right, so some opportunities. So to give you perspective, that red circle is basically centered on Temperance and 168, where the hospital is. That area is our the Sierra Gateway Commerce District, and that area is where our Research and Technology Park zoning designation is. And we've had office buildings, Class A office buildings constructed out there. CHSU did their expansion, as I mentioned, and they're working on more. And the hospital is growing. In addition to that, here's a little close-up of the land use map. In addition to that, we have the VA, Valley Children's have all landed out there, and there's just a ton of interest in that area. See this as the economic engine for Clovis for the next 20 years with the medical and professional area out here, and it will extend into our growth area, which is to the north and east, the purple as it continues on the slide. We are actively working on getting this area ready for development. So that is a huge opportunity area for Clovis, and I'm excited to see it all come together. The next area is our Heritage Grove area. That's basically Shepherd and Willow. And all the way north to Copper, over to the Sunnyside alignment. We've seen our first homes that Lennar has built in this area. A number of homes are coming out of the ground right now. And several groups, development groups, are working on master plans for commercial and office in that area, along with some more houses. So some of the first signs, this is a rendering, but one of the first signs is just getting polished off. And the area has a significant level of branding that's going to give it a unique identity as a village. So I'm excited to see some more of the master plans come in. This area is a huge opportunity for additional retail for the city. There's a lot of rooftops out there, high levels of income. I think our median household income in that area is over $100,000 a year, and will continue to grow as we see homes developed. And we see it as a huge opportunity for office and really recreation for our community. The area is going to have a significant trail presence, parks presence, and the schools. We have a lot of investment from Clovis Unified that will be coming into this area. This is an example of a planned multi-use development that's been proposed at the north end of the development area that has almost like a Santana Row that the developer is proposing in this area. Where you have some housing stacked on top of commercial, and there's been a significant demand for this. It's right across the street from Clovis Community College, which is another asset that needs to be leveraged, and we could potentially see student housing mixed with commercial and all the services that would come along with that. And it's right down the street from Fresno State on Willow. So there's a lot of interconnectivity related to education in this area that we're excited about. The next area is Herndon. I call this area the Dry Creek Business Park. Here's one example. Really, the whole entire industrial area north and south of Herndon Avenue has lots available for development, and they've been developing at a rapid pace. There's still some left, but last time I came here, it was brand new, and now we're probably about 2/3 built out. This is where Provost and Pritchard landed, Crow and Wolf landed. We had several breweries, we had a coffee roaster, we had architectural firms, engineering firms, construction firms, a wide variety of businesses that are landing here. Most of them, if not all, are locally owned. And it's really been great to see locally owned businesses come, take an investment, be part of Clovis, build their building, probably live in the area, and start creating an atmosphere where they can own their structure, have a nice commute. They're close to being able to go to their kids' school events for their employees. And it's really been heartening to see that investment pay off. But there is land still available here, and it's being marketed. But if you're interested, let me know. A lot of like 2-acre pieces in here that makes it real feasible for some of the smaller businesses, whether they're industrial or office, to take advantage. Old Town, I love Old Town. Old Town still remained significant in demand. We have some redevelopment opportunities in this area, and I think we will continue to do so. Realty Concepts is an example of that. We have conceptual drawings of how Old Town can look heading to the east of Centennial Plaza, where the Realty Concepts building sits. So our general plan is ready for you if you're ready to make an investment and do something a little different. And we have examples of that kind of sprinkle along that corridor, but there's some underutilized parcels that we would love to see happen. I get requests constantly for office space in Old Town. Like, that's a huge desire. So there's definitely market demand. If you want to meet it, let me know. Down into the southwest portion of our community is kind of what we call the old Pelco area. It's the Clovis Industrial Park. And then expanding on that is the Clovis Dakota, soon to be Industrial Park. Like I mentioned before, the County of Fresno, with the development expertise of the Cook family, has taken over much of the industrial park, and they've gone from having Pelco at their peak had about 1,800 employees. Now the county has 2,000 plus in that area. So there's an opportunity to serve those employees with some commercial that is in that area as well. And there's still more to go as far as developable area that DDG, the Diversified Development Group, is working on putting up some larger space industrial buildings. So that's an opportunity if you're looking for space. It's right adjacent to the FedEx facility down in that area. And then I go back one, Mike Pickett, Pickett and Associates is developing about 25 acres of light industrial adjacent to the city's recreation facility at Clovis and Dakota. That's going to be more like the 2-acre buildings, and it could go larger, but that's an opportunity as well. So for us to have ready and available land for businesses to come and grow in Clovis, it's really important to us. And we're wide open and ready for anyone that wants to be part of the community. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Vista. So Loma Vista is similar to Heritage Grove, is a planned area, planned for about 30,000 rooftops. It's basically surrounds Clovis East High School, if you're familiar with that area. And we're starting to see some significant improvements beyond just single family homes in that area. We have multifamily housing under construction. We have a new fire station under construction. We have the first commercial. This was the site plan that just opened up during COVID. Well, we have more commercial that has been approved in that area, a major shopping center to the south of the new stuff that just opened up, with national brands coming into that. We have a major city park being built in that area as well right now, and the plan as a whole is coming together. So we're starting to see more commercial interest as well as interest in multifamily to surround that park. And we're excited to see that vision that was really cast in the late 1990s, early 2000s come together for the Loma Vista area. All right, so Shaw Avenue at Clovis Avenue. So back in 2018, I wasn't allowed to talk about Costco, but it's here now. This was the original site plan. And I was trying to talk up Shaw Avenue and Clovis, telling everyone, you better get in. This is your opportunity to get in, because I knew what was coming. And we opened up Costco, and this is what we got. Costco had its second best opening of a Costco in its history. It was supplanted by the opening of the Shanghai Costco about six months later. Shanghai only has like 2 Costcos, so I feel pretty good about us hanging with Shanghai in China. That Costco has done incredibly well. It is a top performer, and it just shows the strength of the market for Clovis and Shaw. We have been able to fill a lot of vacant spots, like I told you about. If you put it in perspective, Shaw and Clovis Avenue is a huge, very strong retail market for us, and is a huge opportunity for someone to come into. We are working with the owners of Sierra Vista Mall, both some of the property owners as well as the actual owners of the mall, on reimagining what the mall could be. And if that interests you, we want to talk. We have some ideas, but we need some expertise on what we think the market could bear and what would be financially possible going there. But that's something that we've been actively working on and doing market studies and starting to imagine what that could look like that will carry forward into a potentially changed land use plan for that area. So we're excited about that and leveraging what Costco has done, all the hotels that have come in that area. So, back when I last did this, I couldn't talk about it, but this is what's happened. So don't miss out this time. Keep on coming. All right, so that sums up opportunities. One thing I always like to do is let you guys all know that we do continue to produce data sets for you all to use. I can provide them to you digitally. This is done by a third party consultant, so it's not me painting a rosy picture. It's demographics. I can provide them down to most intersections in the community if that's a need you have, rather than having to pay for it. Just let us know, we're ready with it. We also do gaps analysis for different retailers. So if you're looking for what kind of retail is needed in our community, we can pinpoint it. We update this every 6 months, so it's pretty accurate. And we've been watching it closely with COVID because things are changing. So it's pretty valuable information. And this is done by the consultant that analyzes our sales tax revenues. So they have a really good understanding of our market. They even will provide us with national level retailers that fit our market based on the needs. We also have traffic count information we can share with you if that's of interest, if it'll help you attract a retailer looking for a certain number of cars a day or what have you. And then we also can produce maps of certain areas or the whole entire community that show you how many rooftops are coming, where they're coming at, and when. So if that's valuable to you, please reach out. I can show that to you. If we were all in person, I'd be handing you like a thumb drive or something with the data. It's a little too big to email all of it at once. That's what I have for today. I think we got some time for questions and to interact. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where we're going and where Clovis should be going. This is a valuable set of insight here in the room, and I really appreciate your time and just the resilience everyone you all showed getting through this time, and I'm looking forward to locking arms and moving forward together. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was great. Amazing information. Great. I'm gonna start with some questions that I have from the in the chat, and then we're just gonna open up to questions from the audience. You could just unmute and ask them. So this is from Rick Hopkins. He says, we're working on a project for the Pelco area. We are being told it will take PG 1 year to provide service to the location. Any updates to PG would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so PG&E is a constant challenge in getting service. You're not unique in hearing that. Give me a call. We can talk it through and strategize a little bit. And I have a few contacts at PG&E that we can see if there's something that can be done, but I don't want to get your hopes up because the city's own projects are struggling with that as well. That seems to be a universal challenge. And PG&E has a lot of pressure on them relative to mitigating wildfires and potential wildfires in the future and moving their crews around to address that. But it has been a significant impact to getting development going and potentially increasing costs and delays. So it is something that's on my radar and is concerning, but I'd be happy to talk it through with you. My direct phone line is 559-324-2095. I'll put it in the chat along with my email. And then also anyone that wants to sit down and chat, I'm always open for buying you a cup of coffee. So feel free to reach out to me anytime, and we'll get it on the calendar and we can talk about anything you're interested in. And I love it because I get to learn from you all. So it's a little self-serving, but I'm happy to do it.
Andy has a long-term membership of Cup of Joe down in the global headquarters of Cup of Joe, right?
Global headquarters. I'm still working on getting my first free cup from their frequent buyer program. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. So let's go ahead and see if there are any other questions. You can unmute and ask yourself or go through the chat. Nope. Let me start. Let me go and so you probably travel a lot. I don't know how with COVID right now. Try to sell Clovis to the rest of the world. How does Clovis compare? How does it fare against other cities in California, like San Jose, you know, others, Modesto, or I don't know, whatever is upcoming as well?
Yeah, we are definitely in a competitive market, just like any business. We have competitors, whether it's Fresno, Visalia, Madera, and it's a little different in that as they do better, so do we. At the same time, we need to make sure we're in a competitive spot. So we do travel around the country or have a lot of conversations during COVID via different platforms to encourage development and investment to come our way. One thing I've noticed as I've traveled around the state the last year or so is how clean and nice of a community that we have, something we take a lot of pride in, and that encourages investment. And in regards to how we fare for demand, our population growth and our sales tax demand that I mentioned before in our data set is pretty strong. So we've seen a lot of national brands really want to be here. They see the value. That makes my job easy. It's just a matter of finding them the spots. Right now, I'm struggling more with finding good spots for people than I am finding people that want to be here. So that's really encouraging, especially given the backdrop of being in the state of California at times. Sometimes that can be a challenge. But whether it's retail or even somewhat industrial, for instance, we opened up a factory in Clovis during COVID. California isn't known for expanding manufacturing. We were able to do that. Opened up a medical school that's private, that's self-funded. That doesn't happen for no reason. Like, we are in a really strong spot to attract that kind of investment, very stable community that gives people a lot of confidence going forward. So that's been really helpful in those conversations at a nationwide level. But yeah, we're always constantly competing with our friends, whether it's here in the Valley or sometimes it's a community in, I don't know, Bullhead, Arizona that we're having to go toe to toe with to try and keep a manufacturer here or attract one. So
I have a question, Andrew. One of the last slides you had was the rooftops. Is that proposed new homes, or permits have already been taken out, or what the developers are proposing that they want to, or where was that graphic?
yeah, so that is a map of the old permits or approved maps in the city of Clovis. So it gives you a snapshot of what's coming in the near future that doesn't get picked up by demographic analysis tools.
And when you say near future, is that like 15 years out, 10 years out? I mean, how far out are we looking at?
Talking like 6 to 9 months.
Oh, okay. But
yeah.
But as far
so
as,
say for instance, we went and talked to a retailer that needed so many rooftops at certain income levels to choose to invest a certain intersection, we can pull the map and look at how many more houses we have coming in the next 6 months to give them some, maybe get them to the spot where they're like, okay, yeah, we have the numbers we need.
Okay. And then on the affordable housing, like there was an article written last year about the between Shaw, Shaw and DeWolf, like between San Jose and Shaw on the east side. Is there any updates on that, or that kind of fall through, or?
Yeah, we've had quite a few affordable housing projects come to fruition during COVID. I didn't concentrate on housing as much for this presentation, but I easily could have. We've had a lot of success in attracting affordable housing developers. Some of that's because of changes in state policy, and developers are taking advantage of Clovis being ready to build that affordable housing. We have one project that the city has committed funds to that is seeking the large capital investment from the state of California through a tax credit program. They have not received that award yet. That's out in that area that you're describing.
Okay.
We have a few others that have come in that are starting to try and figure a few things out. And but we have one affordable housing project under construction off of Willow. Yeah, Willow, south of Shaw. And then we had another off of Willow near Alluvial complete about a year ago that was funded with the Housing Authority. So we've had success there. And then we were also looking to kind of capitalize on some state grant programs for affordable housing. And hopefully we'll have some pretty exciting programs launching first this summer through our budget process that I can't quite talk about fully yet, but we've a lot of gains in that area.
Okay, good news.
So you mentioned something about a new general plan coming up. So I think that last time you talked to us, you said that land with the right, zoning was one of your main problems because you have land, but it's not zoned for what you could potentially use it in terms of like attracting companies and so on. How is that going to affect your upcoming general plan? And do you have, any changes expected?
So yeah, the general plan, everyone views it as a land use document. I view it as a financial plan document or economic plan for the city. We have pretty large opportunities out in our northeast growth area for job development that's in our current general plan, but needs to be refined further to make it easier for development to happen. And that's an area that'll be focused on for going forward. Same with the Northwest. We have some opportunities out there, but some refinement could be needed. So we have opportunities. We've really burned through a lot of them, a lot of commercial property that hadn't been built on for many, many years in the city, infill projects. And so now we're starting to look at how do we keep that flywheel going as well as encourage growth in our growth areas for commercial so that it doesn't take 20 years to get that going. So our next general plan update will need to focus on making sure that the zoning is specific, is what the market demands, and that analysis needs to be done. And we're really, me especially, is thinking, okay, what is the market going to look like? Are we going to need as much office? Are we going to need as much retail? Are we like what is the community going to need as we've seen so many dramatic shifts, volatility the last few years? So that's an exercise that needs to be gone through. At the same time, we're also going to need to spend a lot of time focusing on our older areas, i.e. the Service to Mall area, for instance. What does that look like land use wise? How do we encourage redevelopment of that? So we've got to look at both and come up with feasible development plans for those areas that we can then implement with land use policy and allow the development community to come in and take advantage of that. So it has to be something that's feasible and market driven.
So probably you see a lot more of mixed use, land uses type of, not so boxed in single family or, office or whatever it is, very specific to one type of land use, right?
Yeah, like I could see Sierra Vista Mall, for instance, shifting from a classic C2 commercial use to having a mix of uses, office, retail, entertainment, as well as potentially some housing and maybe some open space that area of the community could use. So those are the kind of things we need to look at, but we also have to make sure it's financially viable. So it's an interesting exercise to go through to try and piece it all together so that we don't put something out there that developers just can't do. We have to think through the financial side of it.
Question, Andy, do you have any, or does the city have any plans for any large scale annexations out in the central east area. I noticed in the general plan, there was that big cavity there that's basically unannexed property.
So annexations occur as development demand comes. It's an area where there's several different developers, mostly single family, that are looking at bringing in large parts of that probably in the next few years, like at Ashland and Leonard. So that could happen. But the sphere is there, it's available. So a developer would need to come in with a plan for that land. Then that allows us to do an actual annexation. I don't see an expansion of our sphere in that area of the city anytime soon.
Jackie Curry has a question. It says, can you expand on any plans for the inside of the Sierra Vista Mall?
Well, I don't own Sierra Vista Mall, and so the owner of the property is going to have to decide what they would want that to look like. I have seen other examples in other communities where the inline is what we call the inside portion of the mall. The inline portion of the mall kind of gets turned inside out and becomes outdoor entertainment and start mixing the uses as I described earlier. So you could see it kind of converted into a space that's a little bit more modern and a mix of uses. Maybe there's some housing that's built to abut right up to it, some multifamily with some retail on the bottom or adjacent, some open park space that makes it really attractive, a place you want to hang out. I'd also like to see the City of Clovis trail system, which abuts the Sierra Vista Mall property, come into the property and kind of make it part of our trail system. And then really keep the healthy parts of the mall. We have some very healthy portions of the mall, like the Target is really successful. The entertainment portion of the mall is really successful. We have some ads are doing really well, and there's demand for those. So we really are having to laser in on what does that portion look like, and how can we adjust land use to allow for some redevelopment to occur, to increase the value of the land, to encourage the investment for so that they can have some security and long-term return.
Excellent. Excellent. Any more questions? So just last one, I guess, for me. I mean, what do you think your job is going to be in the next, let's just say 3-5 years? How's your job going to look like in the next 5 years?
Well, I think a big part of those years are going to be focused on updating our general plan and getting us ready for the next phase of growth in Clovis. Being a voice on the economic side of how do we best position our community to be ready for investors to come in and make our general plan happen. That's going to be a big focus. I think there's going to be a need for me to double down on some of our older corridors and build on the momentum we've had through changes in potential land use along the Shaw Avenue corridor, for instance, and other areas of our community, to keep them healthy, to keep them a place where there's relatively affordable housing, as well as a vibrant commercial area and job area. So how do we adjust to the changing market as a community to allow reinvestment to occur? And then a big focus on housing. That's a statewide issue, and we've been able to provide opportunities here in Clovis for multifamily affordable, market rate, multifamily affordable, single family that's relatively affordable compared to the state. And how do we continue that while meeting the needs of those homes that are coming online, resource-wise, water, sewer, infrastructure needs. So it's really looking at where do we want Clovis to be, 50 years from now, 40 years from now, 20 years from now, and how do we position so that no area gets left behind or forgotten. And the biggest tool we have is land use. So that's where I'm going to be spending a lot of time, as well as working with our businesses as they fight to stay here, to serve our community, and as we are understanding their needs and continuing to be some of their biggest supporters as a city. So business retention and expansion is a huge focus of ours. and that'll ramp up. And during COVID, that's pretty much all we did, was support those businesses, and we'll continue. So I see several fronts that we'll need to be working on, but it's exciting to be kind of looking into the next phase of Clovis's history. You know, we're over 100 years, 110 years old now, and so where are we going to be at when we're 150? Well, now's the time to start thinking about it.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Andy, you want to say some closing statements? Just
I'm available. Give me a call, email me. Don't be bashful. If I can help, answer questions. I don't care how small or how big or the question is, feel free. It's just, I try to be super responsive. I'm always available for a cup of coffee, even if you're just trying to figure something out. Let me know. And I appreciate your engagement and with the Gazarian Center. And thank you, AJ, for your leadership. And thank you for your investment in our region. So, Jack, before
Andy,
Jack.
once again, what is your phone number?
it's 559-324-2095 is my direct line.
095. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I'm always at City Hall. I constantly here, so you can always come back too.
I've had several coffees with Andy over the last few years in downtown Clovis, and he's actually going to come to one of my classes at the end of April. So my students are going to hear a lot of this information again. But thank you so much, Andy. We really appreciate it. I think Clovis has a lot to offer. And not only that, it has a lot to offer now, but it also has a lot to offer in the future. And I think that's what it's exciting to hear you mention and say all these things, wonderful things that are happening. So really appreciate it. And well, if of course, if you have any other questions, you can email Andy, you can call him. He is great in responding. And well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming in today. Another great event. I really appreciate it. I appreciate it, Andrew and the city of Clovis, for all the information you've provided us. Thank you so much.